Margaret Thatcher, the UK's first female Prime Minister. A force of nature who came to power during a time of economic and political chaos. Nicknamed the Iron Lady, she gained a reputation for her uncompromising politics and leadership style. Her view for Britain was clear: free market capitalism, a strong defence, and an end to the power of unions. To some, she was the champion of the common man, a leader who restored Britain's pride and global standing. To others, she was a divisive figure, whose policies left communities shattered and working class lives in ruins. But who really was the UK's first female Prime Minister? How did she gain so much power, and why, after 11 years, did it all come crumbling down? Join us as we explore the woman who reshaped Britain and Britain's relationship with the world.
Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope.
That was Thatcher in 1979 at the beginning of her tenure as Britain's first female Prime Minister. To unpack the making of the Iron Lady, we spoke with Dr. Ellis, a political analyst who spent years studying Thatcher's early career and the climate that propelled her to power.
Thatcher wasn't just the first woman to hold office, she was also the first to truly challenge the established political order. She became leader of the Conservative Party in 1975 in the wake of Harold Wilson's Labour government. The country was in turmoil. We had strikes, rising inflation, and the so-called Winter of Discontent in 1978 to 79. Conservatives were always desperate for someone who could turn it around. Thatcher came in promising a tough approach. She was from a humble working class background, so she seemed to understand from the struggles of an ordinary perspective, even if her policies would later favour the free market.
And what made her different from other leaders?
She was unflinching. She didn't pander to public opinion, unlike previous Tory leaders who tried to meet Labour halfway. Thatcher took a hard line. She talked about the need to reduce government spending, tackle inflation, and confront the power of unions.
So her rise was really about timing?
Exactly. That was the UK's breaking point. The economy was in a bad shape, the people were fed up with the status quo.
It's clear she made big changes. How do you think history will view her?
Well, it's complicated. Thatcher was deeply divisive. On one hand, she turned the economy around. She broke the union's grip on the country and created a culture of individual responsibility, reshaping the British economy into a more market-driven system.
Dr. Ellis mentioned Thatcher's reshaping of the economy. Another of her successes happened in 1982 and thousands of miles from home. A brief but brutal conflict unfolded on the Falkland Islands. For many, it was a turning point, not just in military terms, but in the making of her political career. The Falklands War became a defining moment for Margaret Thatcher, solidifying her reputation as a leader of resolve and unshakable will. At home, the war stirred a wave of national pride, and for some, it remains one of her greatest triumphs. We caught up with Matilda, a young supporter, to understand why the war still resonates today.
Proud, honestly. Margaret Thatcher proved exactly why she was called the Iron Lady. She asked decisively, sent the task force, and defended British territory without blinking.
Some called it reckless at first.
Well, leadership always looks risky before it works. But she didn't wait for permission. She believed in British sovereignty and in our armed forces. The Falklands were just rocks in the South Atlantic, but they were British, and she stood up for that.
What do you think this means for her, politically?
She was struggling in the polls before this. In inflation, unemployment. It wasn't easy, but after the Falklands, her approval shot up. People saw strength. She became a wartime leader, the kind of people rally behind.
And beyond the war?
It is confirmed who she is. Tough, principled, unapologetically right-winged. She's cutting inflation, taking on unions, selling off bloated state industries. And now she's known she'll fight to protect Britain's interests anywhere. That's leadership.
By 1983, the economy began to show signs of recovery. Inflation fell from 18 to 8% and growth began to increase, though unemployment did remain high. In the election of 1983, the Conservatives won a landslide victory, with her majority rising from 44 to 144. With a huge majority, Thatcher now sets her sights on Britain's powerful trade unions. Uncompetitive industries were privatised, with many simply going under. In 1984, the National Union of Miners launched the biggest and most dramatic of the strikes, which lasted an entire year and saw scenes of violence between police and strikers. Thatcher prevailed, and the strike collapsed in 1985, with most of the mines subsequently closed. Anti-trade union laws followed, with union membership halving between 1979 and 1997. Entire regions of the country were left deprived by the collapse of these once mighty industries. Pete Kent spoke to us about the effect it had on his community.
My dad were a miner, his dad were a miner, and his dad were a miner. We're all miners. This village is a mining village. It revolves around the mines. We always knew coal were our heritage. Where one man went down the pit, it was like the whole family did. Kids looked up to the men working down mines. Now we've got families breaking apart. People don't know what to do. It's actually taken away our future.
How do you feel about how the government has handled these closures?
She doesn't care. She did a lot to make a lot of people's lives hell in this village. A lot of them. Everyone's lost their houses. They're all in debt. She doesn't understand what it means to work down a mine, to rely on that job. They didn't offer us anything. They just shut the doors, walked away. It's not right. It was about all that economy to them, but they didn't see the people behind the numbers.
Finally, what do you hope people take away from all this when they look back?
They need to remember what it means to work, to fight for what's right. They should never forget that governments can destroy lives if we let them. Can't let it happen again. Kill a pit, kill a community.
In the years following, Thatcher reformed the local government taxation rate system, replacing it with a new form of flat taxation that was officially called the community charge, but which soon became known, even to government ministers, as the poll tax. The tax was seen by many as unfair. A fixed rate fell more heavily on the less well-off and benefited the pockets of the rich. As the full ramifications of the poll tax emerged over 1989 to 1990, there were protests across the country, including in the Thatcherite strongholds in the Tory constituencies. In London, over 100,000 demonstrated, and there the protests turned violent, with clashes between protesters and the police in Trafalgar Square.
Excuse me.
Hey, is there?
Excuse me.
Hey.
You a socialist?
Yeah, of course I am.
Thatcher's just stepped down. What do you feel about it?
Yeah, good riddance. It took a tax revolt to get rid of her. Think about that.
You talking about the poll tax?
Yeah, same tax for millionaires and minimum wage workers. Come on. That wasn't policy. It was punishment. One flat rate, no matter what you earned. That's not fairness. That's robbery dressed up as a reform.
So you were at the protest then?
Of course I was. Trafalgar Square, coppers everywhere. People furious. Peaceful at first, then it kicked off. But what do they expect? You keep squeezing the poorest, eventually people push back.
Now she's gone, do you feel like you've won?
She's gone, yeah, but the damage, still there. The tax was just the last straw. The resentment's been building for years.
Give me one word to describe the poll tax.
It was unjust, and we made sure she couldn't ignore it.
Thanks.
By the beginning of 1990, the Labour lead in the opinion poll was regularly in the double digits. For the first time, Thatcher lost the support of her key constituencies and became unpopular. Margaret Thatcher's grip on power had begun to slip. Her hardline stance on Europe and the deeply unpopular community charge, better known as the poll tax, sparked unrest not only in the streets but within her own party. Tensions in the Conservative cabinet grew. Senior ministers, including Geoffrey Howe and Michael Heseltine, openly challenged her authority. When Howe resigned with a scathing speech in the House of Commons, it triggered a leadership contest that exposed deep fractures at the heart of her government. Though she won the first round of voting, the margin was too narrow. One by one, key cabinet ministers urged her to step aside. Isolated and politically wounded, Margaret Thatcher resigned on November the 28th, 1990, ending 11 years as Prime Minister. Margaret Thatcher's resignation marked the end of an era, brought down not by voters, but by her own party. Her legacy remains fiercely debated, a symbol of strength to some and of division to others. To unpack her impact and the lasting consequences of her fall from power, we brought together a panel of voices from across the country.
My name is Dr. Ellis, and today I've used the power of politics to gather some people of all beliefs into a room to discuss Thatcher and her legacy. So we're here with Pete Kent, who is an ex-coal miner. We're here with Emma and George, who are both passionate socialists. And we're here with Matilda, who is a Thatcherite. So Matilda, what are your thoughts on Thatcher?
Well, Margaret Thatcher wasn't just Britain's first Prime Minister. She revived the economy. Inflation was out of control when she came in, and by the end, it was tamed.
She took office in 1979, inflation was over 13% and unemployment was climbing. Her solution, monetarism, tight control on the money supply, interest rate hikes, and public spending cuts.
Oh yeah, because that worked great, didn't it? If you were rich. Where I'm from, public spending cuts means no jobs, no help, no hope.
And she broke the power of the unions. The miners' strike in 84, she crushed it with police on horseback. People say law and order. I say state violence.
Continuing, Matilda.
She brought discipline. Before her, unions held country hostage. Trains, power, even rubbish collectors were always on strike.
It's true that the UK was plagued by strikes in the 70s, especially during the Winter of Discontent. Thatcher passed many laws banning secondary picketing and made strike ballots mandatory. It curbed union power significantly.
Sorry, you say curbed, I say tossed to the ground. My dad was out of work for 2 years after the pit closed. She didn't just kill the jobs, she killed the communities.
Don't forget privatisation. British Gas, British Telecom, British Airways all sold off. She turned public assets into private profit.
Because nationalised industries were bloated and insufficient. She gave people the chance to own shares and be part of an economy.
Yeah, tell that to the folks who had to sell their shares to pay the heating bill.
Me.
Privatisation was one of her signature policies, along with deregulating the financial sector. Big Bang in 1986 opened up the City of London and made a global financial hub.
And sparked the rise of the banking crash that crashed everything in 2008. Cheers, Maggie.
She empowered individuals. She gave them the right to buy their council home. That's freedom.
Yeah, of course she did, until there were no council houses left.
Had to live in pit for 2 years.
The Right to Buy scheme sold over 1 million council homes in the 80s. It created homeowners, but at what cost? Housing shortages followed because they weren't replaced.
And don't forget the poll tax, the final straw. Same tax for billionaires and broke students. Genius.
It was a community charge.
It was a riot starter, that's what it was.
Indeed, the poll tax led to mass protests and riots in the 1990s and ultimately a rebellion in her own party that forced a resignation.
So, revolution or ruin?
I think she was an icon, and that's the end of that.
Ding dong, the wicked bitch is gone.
Thatcher the milk snatcher. Ooh.
Historians are still debating, which means you're all right and you're all wrong.
So, looking back, is she a success or a failure?
It depends who you ask. If you value free market principles and individualism, she's your hero. But if you see those same policies as causing social harms, you'll view her as a failure. But what's undeniable is that she transformed Britain, whether for the better or the worse, and that's what defines her legacy.
What would it cost them?
Yeah, tell that to the folks who had to shout.
We've done it!
What do you think this means for her politically?
My name is Dr. Ellis, and I've used the power.
UK's first female prime. Oh, I can't do it.